Right, I'm here with a review of the Fenix TK12. This is one of their tactical flashlights, and thus it's a little bit bigger. Here it is in my hand. A little bit bigger than their everyday carry lights, such as this PD20 of theirs. So a little bit different purchase. It's a little bit bigger, 5.4 inches long, 1.3 inches in diameter. Weighs about 5.7 ounces with the batteries in it. So a pretty hefty light. It gives you two different battery options, either two CR123 batteries or one 18650 battery. You can use the rechargeables if you like. Looking at the construction of it, it's constructed pretty solidly. Type 3 aircraft grade anodized aluminum. Starting at the back here, the tail cap, it has the button that is extended just a little bit past the back there, so you cannot tail stand it. It does have these scalloped edges here, a little bit less so on the one side, and then on the other two sides, a little bit deeper, so that you can get your thumb in there and get a little bit better purchase on that tail cap and the button to turn it on. Moving down, it has this rhomboid knurling both here on the tail cap as well as farther down. Gives you a little bit more grip, a little bit more something to hold on to so it doesn't slide out of your hand. Tail cap comes off. The threads feel very solid. Has an O-ring here, helps with its IPX8 weather rating. The threads again very solid. Has the two CR123 batteries. Here's the inside. Batteries go back in. One side note here, this little ring right here, this is an aftermarket ring that screws on there. And what that does is that replaces this cigar ring that was previously on there where this little flat ring is. And the cigar ring comes on there, I guess depending on how you're going to use the light, if you're going to use it in this sort of cigar holding type fashion, then the cigar ring will be useful for you, and also for keeping it from rolling. I don't really like the cigar ring. I think it is a little less aesthetically pleasing, and if you're holding put it back together here. If you're holding the light this way, I think the cigar ring just kind of gets in your way, so I don't really care for it. It does, as far as it not rolling, it has these scallopings up here, and that will keep it from rolling. So if you take the cigar ring off, that's not going to be a problem. Right in here is where the pocket clip would go. It's been taken off on this light, but here's an example of it on the TK15. More of the knurling here, the Fenix logo. Moving down to the head. Head does also come off. Another O-ring here. Batteries can come out, put them in the front if you're so inclined. There's the inside of the head. Up on the head here there are 5 crenellations. I can see two different uses for these. First is the tactical sort of beat someone with them version. Hope to never have to do this, but if you ever got to the point where you need to use your flashlight as a weapon, you could hit someone with these and they're sharp enough they would do some damage. Another use would be when the flashlight is down. If you compare it to something like this ITP that has no crenellations, if the light is on, you can see it. The ITP you would have no idea was on. So, not that that's a big problem very often, but if you accidentally put it down and it's on, you'll be able to tell, and batteries won't die. Moving up to the front, on the lens here, it does have their standard anti-reflective coating to it. And then the reflector, to me it looks pretty smooth, but I'm told that it is just slightly textured. And then has the Cree XPG LED, the R5 version, rated at about 50,000 hours. Probably not a big issue with the length there for most people. This reflector, it's made a little bit more for throw. Puts out kind of a medium-sized hot spot with a bit of a soft edge as compared to some of the other lights, like that ITP, for instance. It puts out a fairly well-demarcated hot spot. They say it throws 179 meters. I don't really know how they measure that. You know, the distance that it goes is going to depend on so many things like fog and weather and how many particulates are in the air. I just took this outside tonight, and it's winter time, it's 25 degrees. there was a lot of particulate in the air, and I couldn't really even tell how far the thing was going because it was running into so much of the sort of fog in the air. So I'm not really sure how they measure that. Kind of take it for what it's worth. I have seen a picture where someone has shined this down a soccer field and it's lit up the goal on the other end. So it is overall pretty bright. Moving on to the user interface, the burn time, the different settings, kind of conglomerate those all into one category here. This has a low output of 8 lumens and a high output of 245 lumens. The ratings on this were actually just redone. This light used to have a rating, I think, of 285 lumens, I believe. And then Fenix just got on board with the ANSI ratings, so you can actually compare apples to apples when looking at different lights. And it's now been rated to 245 lumens. Within the light, there are 3 modes. What they refer to as the default mode, the hunting mode, and the camping mode. And each mode has two different settings within it. Starting first with the default mode. The default mode has a low output of 42 lumens, a high output of 245 lumens. And the way you switch between those is the head here just slightly untwists. So in the untwisted position, it's 42 lumens, and then you tighten it, it goes to the 245 lumens. Then to move on to the next mode, which is the hunting mode, which has a 250 lumen 15 hertz strobe or a 245 lumen straight output, the way you get between them is you start with it in the slightly loosened and then you go tight, loose, tight in a matter of about a half a second, and that will move to the next setting. It'll go off for a tenth of a second and then come on the next setting. So here we go, tight, loose, tight, goes off for a tenth of a second. We're now in the hunting mode, and this is the 245 lumen, just straight beam, or if you loosen it a little bit, you get that 15 hertz, 250 lumen strobe. Again, tightening it goes back to the 245 lumen. Moving on to the next mode, which is the camping mode. Again, we loosen it, and then we go tight, loose, tight. We now have a high output of 90 lumens and a low output of 8 lumens, which is here. And then to get back to the default again, tight, loose, tight. And we're now back at 245 lumens and 42 lumens. Run times, the 8 lumens on the low end will go for 98 hours, goes on forever. 45 lumens will go for about 20 hours, and the 245 lumens will go for 2 hours and 45 minutes. This is a forward click design, so you push it in and the light goes on. You can do the momentary on, as compared to a reverse click design like this Fenix PD31, where you push it in and when you let go, that's when the light comes on. Push it in, let go. So the forward click designs are usually a little bit more on the tactical side of things. It is a pretty versatile light. It can be used kind of depending on what you want to use it for. It does remember the modes. It's more of a tactical type light, so not really an everyday carry light like this PD20, or even to some degree I suppose you could do this PD31 for an everyday carry light if you want. It's a little bit bigger, but this TK12, because of its size, not really an everyday carry light, but great for, say, keeping on the nightstand. You want to go hunting, camping, some different outdoor activities. It's a great light for that. It has the different modes, as I mentioned. It will remember which mode you're in. It's overall pretty good. They have since then come out with the TK15. The TK12 goes to a high of 245 lumens. The TK15 goes up to 337 lumens. So in numbers, quite a bit brighter. In practicality, I've gone outside and tried it, and it's not really a significant difference. The TK12 has a bit more of a focused beam, the TK12 has a bit more of a softer edge beam, whereas the TK15 is a bit more focused. I think the big thing that comes down to deciding what light you want is the user interface. These have essentially the same levels of brightness. They're both going to be roughly about as bright on the bright end, despite the 100 lumen difference. They're both about the same on the low end, but they have different user interfaces. The user interface on the TK12, I initially thought was kind of convoluted, trying to get used to how to do it with that twisting deal. But once you get used to it, it's really not actually that bad. You know, kind of remembering what mode you're in, what mode you want to keep it in. If you want to keep it in the hunting mode where you can go strobe or the straight output, you know, leave it in that. Alternatively, this TK15 has this side button design, so you turn it on and basically you cycle through the modes here just by pushing down this button. Circles through the 4 brightnesses, and if you want to go into the strobe, just hold it and it'll go into that strobe. Hold it again and it goes back out of it. So it's a little bit simpler design. It does also remember what mode you turn it off at. Comes back on to that same brightness. So between these two lights, trying to figure out which one to get really just comes down to a matter of user interface, I think. The sizes are pretty close to the same. You know, the TK15 is a bit bigger, a bit heavier, not significantly. In that same realm, if you don't really need a tactical light, but you still want a bright light, but that's a little bit smaller to carry, this PD31 is 304 lumens. It has a bit more flood as compared to the two of these that are a bit more focused, so you're not going to get quite as much throw out of it. This also has that other user interface where when it's loosened, it will go through the lower modes by half pressing and then into the SOS, back down, and then you tighten the head and it will go into what they consider the turbo mode. That full 304 lumens or half pressing will get you into the strobe. So, you know, not one of these lights is necessarily better than the other. Deciding which one to get, it really just kind of comes down to what you're going to use it for. They're all roughly the same price. They're all roughly the same brightness. Do you need a tactical light? Do you need a smaller light? Just kind of a decision you have to make between the two of them. You're not going to go wrong with any of them. They're all great lights, as are most of the Fenix lights. So that's about it for a comparison. You know, mostly a review on the TK12, just kind of throwing in some other info, comparing them to some of the other newer lights that Fenix has recently come out with. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the comments and I'll try and answer them. And as always, thanks for watching.